started. And before we get started, we would like to know who you all are. So please be sure to share your current role with your agency with us, whether you are an administrator, a teacher, an advisor, a counselor, and if you or other. And if you do select other, please be sure to let us know what other means for you. So whether you are a support staff, an administrative assistant, a secretary, or anything that we have not labeled here, please be sure to let us know. Judy would like to know the audience who's participating in her webinar. So we'd like to check in with you all on that. Thus far, I have about 12 people who have responded out of 25. So if you can please just let us know the role you play at your agency, that would be great. And thank you all so much who have used the other. So we have an educational consultant, a consortium program coordinator, consultant supporting consortium, a coordinator, and administrative assistant. Okay, thank you all very much. We still have about half of you who have not responded yet. So if you can please just let us know who you are, that would be great. Or should I say the role you play at your agency, that would be great. And we'll take just about another minute, and then I'll turn it over to Judy, who will get us started with today's webinar. Okay. Okay, thank you for those who have let us know in the chat pod who they are. We have a researcher as well as Veronica, who is a teacher and technology coordinator. All right. And those of you who have just entered the room, we're just doing a quick poll to identify your role with your agency. So if you're just entering the room, if you can let us know the role you play with your the role you fulfill with your agency, that would be great. And also, if you've entered the room and you've entered with just using your initials or your consortium name, please let us know exactly who you are. And if you are witnessing this webinar with multiple people, also let us know who everyone is in the general chat pod. Oh, and so about a little more than half of you have responded. I see a couple people who are typing in the other role area, so I'll let them type. We have, thank you, Rhonda, for letting us know you were a principal, and then Chrissy's an educational consultant. All right, thank you all very much. Okay, so I'm not seeing anyone else typing. Thank you all very much for participating. That information definitely is helpful so that we'll know who's all in the audience today. Now I will turn it over to Judy, who will get us started with today's webinar. Judy?
Thanks, Veronica. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this discussion on Career Pathway System Building and a demonstration of the California Career Pathway online tool. I am Judy Mortrude. I am from the Center for Law and Social Policy, or CLASP, and CLASP is a national nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. that works on policy and practice solutions to benefit low-income people. CLASP has been working with California in the career pathway space for about a decade now, and we've also been involved in the implementation of the Adult Ed Block Grant, now known as the Adult Education Program. So today I'm going to put these two bodies of work together with a presentation about building adult career pathways. So over the next hour, I'm going to provide a bit of background on the California Career Pathway work and share with you the underlying framework that informed how the information is presented on this website, and have you use the chat feature to share your own experience tackling some of the sticky questions in career pathway building. So please do get ready to type again. Then we're going to go online to the website, and I'll give you a sense of the scope of initiatives in the tool directory and walk you through some of the functionality of the website and look at the comparison function of the tool. And then we'll demonstrate how we imagine an adult educator like you, a consortia leader, a principal, an instructor, a consultant, accessing the information from the tool and using that information in a next step conversation, whether that's the current WIOA regional planning conversations that are happening in your communities or in your adult ed program 3-year strategic planning, which is on the horizon for you all. So first, a little bit of background. As I say, our work with California on the career pathways began with something called the Alliance for Quality Career Pathways. The Alliance is made up of 10 leading career pathway states. They came together in 2013 to design and test a career pathway framework, and that's this document centered here in the middle, the Shared Vision Strong System Framework, which included a definition for a career pathway program, a way of thinking about programs building into pathways, and quality indicators for a system, and a menu of career pathway participant metrics for partners to use in continuous improvement efforts. California has played a leading role in advancing career pathways nationally through the Career Ladders Project and the Linked Learning Alliance and the many other investments of resources and expertise that have influenced not only the Alliance document, but also federal legislation. So the Alliance Framework, this Shared Vision Strong System document, we released in May of 2014, and lo and behold, by the next month, we had a reauthorization of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the federal legislation that governs WIOA Title II, which is the federal investment in adult education. And that legislation gave us a definition of career pathway. Career pathway is one of those terms that people use to describe many things, right? From their entire working life that brought them to this moment of sitting in front of this computer watching this webinar to a specific course that you offer in your school. But we do now have the federal definition of a career pathway program, a particular service delivery model. And it exists in three major pieces of federal legislation that govern education and workforce development. It's in WIOA, it is in the Higher Education Act, and it's also in Perkins 5, which will begin implementation in July of 2019. But I want to be really clear that this definition exists in these laws, not because somebody in Washington, D.C. on the Hill thought it up. It exists because practitioners across the country, like you all, have been innovating and designing services for greater impact. And there are organizations like mine and others that are familiar to you that try to do the work of lifting up what you're doing and bringing it to legislators and making sure that the federal legislation reflects the good work happening on the ground. So the definition here, it's very comprehensive, it's very good, and like all legislation, it probably has too many words. But one word that's really important is here at the end of Part F and before Part G, where it says the word "and." And lets you know that this 7-part definition, all of these 7 parts need to happen in order to to meet the criteria for a career pathway program for this combination of rigorous high quality education training and other services. So while the definition has 7 parts, I'd like to break it down essentially into 4 concepts, and that's my 4 little orange boxes here. Really, parts A and G just say this program has to have labor market value for the participant, for the individual who spends his or her time in this program. B and F say that this program needs to pay attention to secondary and post-secondary credentials. It is not simply a short-term skill program. It pays attention to educational fundamentals that help people move forward in education. C is about the work of the workforce navigator, the academic and career counseling that accompanies the program to help people make choices about their education and career goals. And D and E are essentially the integrated design and delivery, the integrated education and training models that ask us to contextualize and offer things concurrently in order to accelerate progress. So that's the definition of a career pathway program. Another construct that the Alliance states wrestled with was how to differentiate a program from another type of education or training or workforce service. States created a lot of visuals over the early 2000s trying to illustrate this idea of programs building into pathways. And this visual comes from the U.S. Department of Ed, the Office of Career Technical and Adult Ed, which is the federal office that governs adult ed and Perkins Career Technical Education. It tries to show the on-ramps for both secondary high school students through programs of study, but also for adult education students in these on-ramps through integrated instruction. It's really trying to describe a community-wide career pathway model that allows people on and off ramps as needed, but always with this idea that the skills and the credentials that were earned will help people keep moving forward. There are no dead ends in this model. And finally, another idea that's become really clear as practitioners do career pathway work is that for our programs and our pathways to be sustained and to scale, they need to exist within career pathway systems. Currently, one of the adult education program field teams is called the IET, the Integrated Education and Training Pathways Field Team, is working to identify how the state agencies here in California can help support this system building. So representatives from many of the state agencies, CDE and the Chancellor's Office and Labor, and representatives from colleges and adult schools are putting together documents under each of these system building components, identifying principles and goals and strategies and promising practices. Peter Simon of the Career Ladders Project is facilitating this field team, which will have recommendations to the adult ed program office by mid-December in each of these areas. So those 6 areas on that previous slide come from the Federal Interagency Career Pathway Toolkit. That toolkit played an important part in class preparation for looking at the Career Pathway Initiative. So we're getting toward the website here. In 2015, as the Alliance framework was released and then WIOA came along, the Irvine Foundation asked us at CLASP to help conceptualize the way that California career pathway work fit together or could fit together into a system. So to begin our work, we analyzed these 9 national or California-specific career pathway frameworks. And this analysis is what led us to the 6-element structure that we used to then examine and evaluate what are now more than 80 different California investments on the website. So before we go to the website, I want to spend a few minutes giving you a sense of how these 9 overarching education workforce development frameworks led to this concept of the 6 core elements, and to hear from you. So get ready to type here. To hear from you about your challenges and successes within these system building elements. So the first one that we're going to talk about is sector. And as we go through each of these 6, I'm just going to quickly flash up these brief highlights from the major frameworks. My purpose here with a slide like this is that you see whether you're working in linked learning, or you're in Perkins, or you're in Strong Workforce, or you're working under the WIOA plan, or a WIOA program like Title II. All of those frameworks say something about sector, whether it is the WIOA plan calling for pathways to align to growing and emerging industries, or Perkins programs of study and Strong Workforce calling for alignment between colleges and industry. All of these frameworks are really calling out sector as a key component of career pathway system building. So as we move into, oops, I went too far. Beyond identifying the specific framework components that tie to each element, we also developed a shorthand definition. A definition of sector here is focusing on an industry with a skills shortage, right? Engaging employers. And then we came up with a list of guiding questions. And we're going to throw these guiding questions. Thank you, Veronica. Veronica is throwing these guiding questions up on the screen for you now. So what I'd like to do is just have you give us a quick snapshot of a way that you in your adult career pathway development have wrestled with the question of sector. How have you chosen if you stood up a healthcare career pathway or a manufacturing career pathway, how have you chosen that sector? How have you identified the workforce need in your regional economy that will be addressed? So Thank you. I see some souls jumping in and typing for me. That's great. So I'd love to hear, where you're getting the information about sector, whether that's, is it directly from employers, LMI data, that's terrific. The chamber, these are exactly workforce development boards. They're authorized under WIOA, right? This is part of their charge is to help get this data together in the local and regional economies. So that's great to hear that people are accessing that data. And the second question that I think is a question that doesn't get asked as often when we're talking about sector work is, how do you make sure that your career pathway program creates skills that are portable and relevant over time? In other words, how are you not simply creating a customized training program? How are you making sure, lovely, focusing on certifications, right, that transfer, are stackable, exactly that transferable skills. One of the things we know is how quickly industries change the kinds of skills needed and credentials needed, and so paying attention to that portability and that relevance over time is really a critical part of the sector discussion. Convening local industry leaders, excellent. All right. Local government industry credential, perfect. I love these. We'll archive linking to registered apprenticeship. Yeah, that's a beautiful, right? We can connect to those really important sector conversations happening in apprenticeship space. Okay, I'm going to move us along. Thank you. We're going to do this through each of the 6 elements. I really appreciate your participation. Okay, the second element that we're going to talk about is design. And again, here are those 9 different frameworks, and the design considerations are really evident across these frameworks, with many stressing the on and the off ramps, the transparent and well-connected courses and credentials, the attention to work-based learning. So these are all considerations as you are designing, again, with your partners, designing the adult career pathway. And our shorthand for design is thinking about building this pathway for a defined population, thinking about how to address the starting skill levels, thinking about that course and credential sequencing. How do people move across settings? This is the big question in the adult ed program here in California, and between the adult school and the community college. How does design of your career pathway program accommodate those 2 settings? So we're going to move into the questions, and again get a feeling for. Oops. There we go. Thank you, Veronica. A sense of how you're answering these questions about design. First question is really about your target populations. Who are you mainly thinking about as you're designing your career pathways and the needs of the different needs of your target populations? Second question is asking you to think about how the pathway is designed from the participant's perspective. And what I'm really trying to get at there is, does this adult career pathway program feel different than being in a regular ESL or adult ed, high school completion, or college entry class? So just sort of the idea of how do your participants experience your pathways? And then that third question is really, again, how do you connect over settings and stages? How do you connect across systems? Adult career pathway work, as we all say, is really about partnership and about working across systems. How do you make that happen? So we're getting a few answers here. Thank you. Appreciate you typers who are willing to jump in with me. We've got an IET class focused on the needs of adult ESL students needing job training. I think that's, when we build courses specifically for English language learners, we know that there are definite vocabulary needs and other kinds of needs that may not exist in other populations. So it's good that those are being considered. Right, we'll give it a few minutes here, 2 minutes, see what other kinds of responses you can share with each other. Peter calls up that many consortia have transition specialists. Right, I've been the last day and a half with the EL Navigator project, the EL Workforce Navigators, right, and that's an initiative specifically developed to answer question number 3, how to connect across systems. Dana, thank you for sharing that. Yes, this is that transition is what does present a big challenge. This idea of transition, moving adult students to the community college. There's got to be a real intentional design, right? This isn't simply about people leaving one system and moving to another haphazardly. It's really the hard work of the career pathway designers to figure out how to make that transition purposeful. IT, workforce development, research, and needs of the English language learners, right? And a lot of work in California on the IET work is happening within the English language learning population because of the requirement under IEL Civics. But IET programs are happening across the country in all kinds of populations. From the participant perspective, yeah, that specific vocabulary, right, can be a hindrance in the CTE class. I think that's so critical. Transitions from K-12 to community college is slow. Yep. I think that some of the things that I've heard about here are those agreements put in place, credit articulation agreements, kind of dual enrollment strategies for adult learners. We spent a lot of energy across the country in dual enrollment for high school to college, and I think the adult dual enrollment, the adult integrated instruction is sort of nascent, and you guys are on the front lines of it. So that is why it is a challenge and a struggle. Thank you, Dana. Talking about your program needing flexibility and guidance provided by the adult education system. Yeah, exactly. Okay, we're going to move to the third element. Again, just acknowledging that these different frameworks call out partnership through stressing the development of a shared vision, through cross-agency strategic planning. Lord knows here in California, you know a lot about cross-agency strategic planning. It's really what the Adult Ed program, the Adult Ed Block Grant, called you to do, right? Sit at tables regionally with people who worked inside other funding streams but had shared your mission, shared your vision. These frameworks also really call for engaging employers and other community stakeholders as part of the partnership structure. So partnership, probably one of the hardest questions to wrestle with. So let's pop up a few of the questions here under partnership. It really gets to, these questions really get to the very definition of a partner, right? If a partner is someone who brings resources and takes responsibilities, then how is that articulated? Who sets the table, right? Who comes together and kind of convenes this conversation? When they come together, what kinds of resources and responsibilities does each player bring? What do you ask of your employer partners? What do you ask of your human service partners? What do they ask of you? How do you find a common language? This question, I was just having this conversation this morning, again, at the EL Navigators meeting, as we were looking at a toolkit that initiative will release. And in the toolkit, the individual being served is referred to as a client sometimes, and a customer sometimes, and a learner and a student, right? How do we even come up with the words that we use to describe the person we're serving? So let's see if I can get anybody to jump in here. Anybody willing to to share some of your struggles with the partnership conversation. As I say, this can be the hardest. I don't see any. Oh, well, Guy, you're so good. I have one committed participant willing to type. Oh, you disappeared on me. Oh, there you come. This is like it's like watching your cell phone. You know, when you're texting with somebody and you see those little bubbles come up and then they disappear, and then your heart breaks because you can't figure out why someone stopped talking to you. So yes, thank you for sharing. I think it's really so important, especially in the adult ed block grant, the adult ed program in California, which really mandated partnership in a whole new way, and really a groundbreaking way for the country. To spend some time thinking deeply about not just a partnership and an MOU, but this idea of roles and responsibilities, this idea of defining the challenges, right? The challenges with different policies, different practices, the hiring practices, the measurement practices. Great. We'll give it just a few more seconds here. Industry credentials, skills needed. Yes, right. ESL teachers, soft skills instructors, right? Even in your own organization, adult career pathway work requires partnerships in a new way. Okay, I'm going to move us on just because we've got a lot of content, but I love getting a conversation started like that. Okay, delivery. So we had design. This is delivery. Delivery is really about a shared focus on an instructional delivery model that brings together academic, technical, and work-based learning. And you see that in all of the major frameworks that define career pathway. So here, just quickly, delivery questions include those things, those kinds of instructional strategies like contextualization, like concurrent remediation, like competency-based education. So the questions here are really, what kinds of different instructional strategies are you using? How do you use academic and occupational skill building together? Who's doing work-based learning? What is work-based learning approaches? What do they look like in an adult education system? Anybody want to throw up some ideas there? I think it's important to, thank you for if you're typing in. I do think it's worth good hands-on training. Yes, hands-on training. It's worth trying to separate out as you're having adult career pathway building conversations to think about design and delivery separately. And you can design career pathway programs and sort of course sequences till the cows come home. But then how you're delivering that instruction is really important. Nice, good feedback from co-teacher after lectures. Oh, that's so nice to hear. I think it's so great to hear about delivery models where people have really challenged themselves to work in a co-teaching model and to really be open to the kind of professional development and challenges that can bring. Okay, I'm going to move us on. Appreciate your help there. Another element that we see across all of the frameworks that define career pathway for us is paying attention to comprehensive student supports. Some of the frameworks have been more focused on academic supports, and others have a broader focus. We know that for many adult learners, the reason they leave our programs is not academic. It's because of many other supports that they need. So supports we define as providing participants with really individual, differentiated assessment of their needs, active advising, referrals to specialized suppliers when that's needed. So again, a few questions here. I think the adult ed program has offered perhaps more resources and more flexibility in the support space. I've certainly heard about many really awesome ways that California providers are really looking holistically at the needs of your participants in order to help them be successful in your programs. So if you can share anything about your own work in, have you put in specific support service staff? Have you allocated line items in your budgets? What have you done to think about the supports that people will need? And then the second question is really, thinking about differentiation and sort of the equity consideration in differentiation. How do you, people need different things, right, to be successful. So how do you come to terms with perhaps not equally distributing all of your support services, but thinking about who needs what to be successful, so that you're differentiating the investment for individual participants. Yes, childcare, free childcare. What an amazing support that is. And it's terrific that can happen through the adult ed program. It's really terrific when that can happen, right? Leveraging the child care community development block grants and other sources of funding for child care as well. Anybody going to take me up on that equity question? Let's see. Oh, thank you, Peter Simon. Going to give you a minute to see what we get there. Scholarship program, nice. Formerly incarcerated students, absolutely, right? That's a total consideration of equity to think about the kinds of supports that a reentry population might need, from expungement to the kinds of housing supports. Many different supports, again, thinking about your target population and what needs you're going to find inside a population and what kind of needs you're going to find with individuals. Okay, I'm going to move us forward for the last element, and that is everybody's favorite, measurement. All of the frameworks in some way or another address the idea of measurement, trying to find common measures across systems, right? Developing the capacity for data collection and data use. WIOA certainly tried to introduce this idea of shared performance as a way of scaling, supporting, sustaining adult career pathways. And we're seeing that in the Perkins 5 legislation as well. So we call out in our definition these ideas of sharing data, selecting metrics, and committing to data use with some of these key questions. So last time I'm going to ask you to jump in and give me a little bit of your expertise in how you define success in a career pathway. How do you get that data together to be able to show success of your career pathway work? And then how do you think about data and measurement? Yes, for outcomes, yes, for reporting, but also for continuous improvement. I think this is the space where we in adult ed have a lot of we've gained a lot of expertise in reporting on the required measurements, but what do we really need when we're sitting together to look in real time about what's happening in our programs, where people are succeeding, where people aren't succeeding, so that we can continuously improve our work. Yeah, exactly, Diana. The data analysis, looking at reasons why people don't complete as well as those who do complete, right? And that can be hard because a student leaves you, they leave you. How do you know? So what kind of processes can you put in place to sort of get that data? Contacting students post-graduation, right? Collecting employment data, completing programs, getting certificates. These are all ways that we have to think about, and again, in our own system and then sort of cross-system. persistence, how we can help people persist, follow-up surveys, right? There are certain things you can do with administrative data, other things have got to be done through that sort of survey and human touch, and they're equally important. Though one can take a lot more energy than the other. Great. Thank you. Thank you again for sharing. I appreciate this. Yeah, data teams. Oh, yeah, great idea. A lot of adult career pathway work is going to require a data team and a cross-system data team at that. All right. Yeah, input from teachers, staff, students, input from the students themselves, right? I think that's one of the sort of lived experience theme that is coming up in a lot of this work in adult career pathway work recently is hearing direct feedback and the other stakeholders. Great. Great. Okay, I'm going to move us on, and we are now going to go to the website. So this is going to take a little bit of technical savvy from me. I'm going to try to move over to sharing my screen, and hopefully, yes, you are seeing the website. So this is cacareerpathways.clasp.org. It is the California Career Pathways website that the Irvine Foundation asked us to put together those many years ago. And when we first put it together, it did have about 50 initiatives. As of today, it's got 80, and I think I heard of 2 new things happening in California this morning that they're going to push it up to 81 by next week. You can see across the top a little menu that allows you to jump along and look at the elements and the directory and the comparison. You can also just sort of scroll down to the bottom of the page. You're going to see an arrow here. If you click this arrow, it brings you to a general overview page. The overview page asks you to start here by looking at the elements, and if I click there, you're going to see this looks like the discussion we just had. It has those questions about and the 6-element structure and the guiding questions. And then you come to the directory, and the directory is really the heart of the website. It is the bulk of the content, and you can see that there are 80 different initiatives currently here. And just quickly looking down the page, you're going to see this visual where you've got these triangles. They look sort of like Trivial Pursuit pies in the game. But some of them are full and some of them are less full, and that's explained here. Each initiative has some of these elements for career pathway system building that can support you in building career pathways. And we've characterized each element by intensity, low, moderate, high, and if you click on degree of intensity, you'll come to a whole explanation about this, but I'm just going to take us back. I want to stress here that this is not an evaluation of an implementation of the program, not an implementation in one area, not an implementation statewide. This is an analysis of the way an initiative was designed, was set up in statute or in an RFP. So at the directory, you can also see that you can filter these 80 different initiatives. You can look at just, for example, post-secondary initiatives, and you can see that there are then 25 of them listed here. You can look at benefit and work supports, and there are 6 initiatives listed under that category. You can look under workforce development. There are 17. Okay, so that's one way to filter, perhaps by an area that you work in or you want to learn more about. You can also filter by the element. So say I am really interested in initiatives that focus on sectors and supports. And you can see once I've applied those 2 filters, I'm down now to 14 different initiatives. I can also use the search over here. So one of the initiatives I've been hearing a lot about in the last couple of days is AB 1111. So let's say I want to find out what the heck is AB 1111. So I type that in here and it comes up. This is breaking barriers to employment. Once I have this initiative, I have a couple of choices here. I can click right on that title. I can click on the picture. I can click on the little piece of paper with the magnifying glass, and when I do that, it brings me to a page specifically about this initiative. A little bit of background. It's a grant program. The California Workforce Development Board is going to administer it. There's a link to the legislation and a little bit about, okay, this is how much money was appropriated in the 18-19 budget. Then, just like that 6-element structure we just went through together, I can click onto each of these, the little triangles, and I can learn things about partnership. You can see that partnership is completely filled in, which means we think it's a high intensity in this element. And if I read here, I'll learn that this is going to be a partnership between the American Job Centers of California and community-based organizations. In delivery, I can see, oh, okay, there is a targeted activities in this initiative. There a list that's applied, not limited to, but there are things like on-the-job training and work experience, high school diploma, equivalency. Can work my way around through supports, and supports, again, high intensity, talks about instructional and academic supports, but also direct payments to offset the opportunity cost of participating in training. That's a really important and often unfunded kind of support. And measurement, it does not have a separate set of performance outcomes, but uses the performance monitoring systems embedded inside education, training, workforce development systems. Inside sector talks about these programs need to be done in alignment with regional labor market needs. So this is just an analysis of AB 1111 within the 6-element structure. You'll also find at the bottom a short paragraph about opportunity, what are the things that we think other initiatives in California like Strong Workforce, the Adult Ed program, the WIOA titles, the ELL Navigators, those are all programs that would benefit from sort of being leveraged with this program. And then you can download a PDF of this this particular page, this analysis. You can also send us an email. One of the things that we realize as we sit out there in Washington, D.C. and analyze what's happening in California is that we may not get everything right. So if you see information that needs updating or adjustment, we ask that you provide that kind of feedback to us here. So then I can go back to the directory, and the comparison function of this tool is simply to say that I am an adult ed program administrator, like many of you here. So here's my program, and I want to think about my particular initiative as I might leverage it against these other types of initiatives. So we have a little plus sign. The plus sign, when you click that, adds this profile, the adult education program profile, onto essentially like a clipboard. Okay, so I've added that. Then let's say I want to think about how that works along with, for example, WIOA Title II. So I can search for WIOA Title II, and I know that it's going to show up down here, and I can add that. Now you can see I've got 2 things on my clipboard. And what the heck, as long as I'm here, there's Title I Youth. I've been wondering how I can figure out how to work better with Title I Youth. And let's say Strong Workforce program. How can I work better with that? So now I've added 4 things onto my comparison. So you build your own comparisons. And again, you have a great deal of content here. Starts with just the overview, which sort of shows you okay, so the adult ed program might have high intensity in this measurement, whereas others don't. So how might I leverage those together? And I can look at the complete comparison here, which is going to give me the opportunities and the overview for each one of those initiatives I've selected, and I can download this PDF. So what's the point of downloading these PDFs? Well, in our imagination, these are the kinds of resources that you would take with you to those planning tables, those WIOA regional planning tables, your adult ed program, 3-year strategic planning programs, to have a conversation about how can we build more community-wide career pathways for adults. How can we sit together and sort of define our interest in our target populations, where we got shared populations we're serving? How can we look for the win-win between my program and your program? So we have a list of questions that we think could help start this conversation. Really, what's possible? What's the biggest potential benefit that could come out of us collaborating together? What can we do in the near term? Who can help us? So these are essentially, it's a resource to build awareness among practitioners in this shared space, and a resource to help drive some of these conversations like you and I were having over the chat box, live and in person with your community partners. There's also a link to our braided funding toolkit, and I'm going to show you a California specific. In fact, you've got it in one of the resources you can download now. To be able to move, once you're ready, to be able to move into the sort of that resource conversation. But we never encourage that as the first place to start. Okay, I'm going to try to move us back off of this website now and get back to sharing my PowerPoint. I hope I've successfully done it. Great. Okay. Looks good on my end. All right. So a couple more slides, and let's get to some questions. So I want to, before we finish, note a few more system building opportunities, right? Career Pathway or California policymakers are really working on system building with their ability to provide leadership and to write policy. The California Workforce Development Board and a cross-agency team of California leaders created and are operationalizing a co-enrollment plan across adult education and workforce development that was part of a federal co-enrollment technical assistance project. And we're seeing things come out of that, like the EDD, your Employment Development Division in California, is releasing policies on shared referral and work authorization, which is one of those sticky areas between adult ed and Title I partners. And there's a co-enrollment directive in the works, I hear. So that's going to be, really a help in the career pathway system building. Those field teams, as I mentioned, the Pathways field team, creating recommendations on policies and practices for integrated education and career pathways. And of course, the adult ed program and WIOA Title II performance accountability policy, right, always has a strong impact on career pathway system building. So you're not in this alone. And then finally, this is that worksheet on braided funding. So this comes from a conversation again that I was having at the ELL Workforce Navigator meeting yesterday on one way that partners might sit together and start this conversation. The career pathway conversation feels so big and broad, is really to think about, let's sit together first and decide who our target population is, and then let's identify. So if you pull up this document from the Adobe, you'll see that there's a column here called key tasks, and this is really meant to be a document you build together. We've got some ideas there that we think are the key tasks under each of these sort of building partnership and design and delivery. But you will sit with your partners and create your own list of key tasks. And then sort of deciding who will do what, who will provide that childcare, who will provide the work-based learning opportunity, who will provide the foundational English language learning, who will provide the skills training, right? And really by identifying those roles and responsibilities within your key tasks, you've essentially created a braided funding strategy, right? Because you are investing together to operationalize that program. Okay, so let's see if we've got some questions. If you want to type in any questions, I know that's a lot of content. I would really appreciate questions, comments, feedback when you've had time to dig into the website a little bit more. You can write to me, or you can write in the website itself as a way of providing comment. But it's really meant to be a tool that helps practitioners on the ground make sense of the huge ecosystem of career pathway investment that's going on in California. So Veronica, have we got any questions that have come across the line?
Judy, no, we haven't had any questions come across.
I've overwhelmed everyone. All right, well, that can't be good. You know where to find me. I am available through clasp.org. I'm available through SCOE and Diana and all the good adult ed support you have here at SCOE. And I'll just hang on a second in case anyone decides they want to. Oh, Diana says she's going to ask me to share more information. Well, that's great. I'll try to share things in more bite size. I do appreciate everybody participating as in the discussion questions, the guiding questions portion of the website. You know, the career pathway work, as we went through this presentation, it's about program design, and most of us live inside that program design space because that's where we deliver the service. So it takes some leveling up in your conceptualizing to think about the pathway work, the cross-system work, and then up another level to think about the policies and the design elements in the system building. So it's a dense conversation. Okay. Oh, Neil Kelly. Oh, hey, Neil Kelly. I'm always listening to Neil Kelly on webinars. Now he's listening to me. How would you push people to create more pathways? Incentive funding? Oh, well, I love incentive funding. You know that I love incentive funding. I do think pathway work is hard work. Pathway work does require us to, work across systems in very complex ways. And so, yes, I think incentive funding, we have in adult education, in the WIOA Title II, we have a way of seeing integrated education and training. It's in our reporting for WIOA Title II. So we have a way of seeing when people are putting these kinds of integrated models on the ground. It's really the only way in federal reporting to see this kind of service delivery. There is even though Career Pathway is mandated in Title I, local workforce boards are required to convene their education partners to design and implement career pathways. We don't have a way to see that in the data. We can only see it in adult education through IET. So I think building some sort of incentive inside adult education for IET would be a fabulous idea. Make them create approved pathways. Well, yes, approving pathways, I think, it's certainly the way that Washington State, kind of the godfather of this integrated education and training model, has a program approval process. But there are also resources that help make it appealing. So I agree with that. Neil Kelly is admonishing you all. Only 30% of students are showing progress in the programs. We need to get better. Yeah, there's probably some data error stuff in there too. We need to get better at reporting and telling the story of what we're doing through our data. I think that's very true. And Peter says, yes, our field team is hoping to provide examples and a venue for sharing practice that will help others. I think that's critical. I mean, this is again, a lot of us shy away from doing career pathway work because it just feels like something new. And I hope that I was able to convince you that the career pathway definition and the integrated education and training definition that exist in the law now are there because of the work that that people were doing across, that adult ed practitioners were doing across the country. It exists to really show a best practice model. And so, yes, showing how people are operationalizing those definitions, I think, is critical to helping people make those first steps. All right, we're coming up on the top of the hour. I see, I'm getting one more question, so that's great. I'll give it another minute while people are typing. Dana, where can we get initial help building pathway models? It would be, it would be great to do a kind of a workshop, right? To just really sit together and you try to use some of these tools. I would be very interested in, like, if you can bring together a planning table that wants to use that Braided Funding Toolkit or Braided Funding Worksheet or use this tool. I'd be really interested in Skyping in and being part of those conversations. I don't know that there are any experts, but there are certainly people who have been through a lot of the trials and tribulations who could at least help guide those initial conversations. Lisa, I'd like to be a part of forming a planning table task force. Lovely. I love that. This is what we need, are people who see the importance of this work. Neil Kelly, should we let Neil Kelly have the last word? Neil Kelly always has the last word. I'm not sure we should. Somebody else should. Creating a layer of regional experts would be a good start. I think that's a great idea. That's a great idea. What was it? The Career Pathway Trust Grants, right? That really large investment in career pathway work for the K-12 system came with sort of regional experts who were supporting that complex system, doing that heavy work. You could see the same type of idea happening for adult ed. Dina and Lisa are typing. Give it a minute. Create a regional experts group on LinkedIn. Oh, yeah. Or place hands-on. Dana says, love the webinars, need hands-on. Yes, it's always good to have a mix of different kinds of ways to do the learning, right? And Neil Kelly says it's coming. All right. I, again, want to thank you all for participating. This is a lovely platform to work in, and you have been made me feel like you're right here in the room with me, so I appreciate that. You do know where to find me. I will ask Veronica to also perhaps post that funding worksheet as a Word document. That is a funding worksheet. That funding worksheet document really is meant to be customized and tailored to your own needs. So let's put that up as a Word document as well as a PDF. And Veronica says she will. All right, 1 o'clock. Thank you all. I appreciate it. I hope to be in conversation with you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Judy, and thank you all very much for your time and your participation this afternoon. I hope you all found this webinar very useful. Next week is Thanksgiving, so TAP will take a break from our weekly webinars. However, we will be back the following week with 2 webinars the week of the 26th. We have a webinar on November 28th and November 30th, and they're all around the 3-year planning process. So the first webinar will be on 3-year planning key resources, and then the November 30th webinar will be on logic modeling to support the 3-year planning process. So please be sure to tune in. the following week, so not next week, but the week of the 26th, for those two very important webinars. I've also posted the link of where you can register. I will now close the webinar, and when I do, the evaluation will appear. Please be sure to take a minute or two to let Judy know what you thought about today's webinar, and if there are additional professional development topics or technical assistance requests that you have, in addition to speak to what Judy was talking about forming those work groups and maybe facilitating a hands-on workshop. Starting with the evaluation will be a great start to facilitating those types of workshops. So thank you all very much, and I hope everyone have a great day.